You spin on corner exit, not because you're reckless, but because the rear suddenly lets go. One lap the car feels fine, the next lap you don't trust the throttle anymore. You lose consistency, you lose lap time and confidence. So you do what everyone else does. You search for the right TC settings and you start copying numbers. 319, 534, 123. It doesn't fix the problem. I've been sim racing for years, have built multiple setups through all the updates of Le Mans Ultimate, and this video will go a lot deeper into traction control so you can finally understand it, even when the game would update its tire model again. Let's get into it. Okay, so is a lower traction control faster than a higher one? Not always. For instance, these are my TC settings that I use for the Porsche GT3 a lot. The default is 668. Now that is not a guarantee that this now is all of a sudden way slower than what I come up with, but it's just more fitting for me. So for a Porsche, I would use like 311 or 322. But for instance, on a Corvette, where I was driving with this car on Interlagos last week on a live stream, I was absolutely killing it with a 579 TC setting. To understand this fully, we need to understand this thing right here. But before we do that, we need to understand the engine of your particular car. Why is every car different and why do they need different TC settings? First, we need to think about the engine. So if we have, let's say a BMW has more or less of a progressive way of releasing the power on the rear axle, meaning you got torque and horsepower being like more similarly. So this kind of engine curvature is kind of more forgiving on how the TC acts because it's like more nuanced and more spread out on the throttle. So you hit throttle, let's say 5,000 RPM, the torque might still climb throughout the RPM and engine power as well. For instance, this could be a good example why you want to rev out all the way up to, let's say, 9,000 RPM. Let's look at this engine curvature. So in this instance, let's say you're driving 4,000 RPM and all of a sudden the RPM starts climbing and now you get a big release of power all of a sudden, okay? This might make you spin because it's too much power all of a sudden. This is what they call turbo lag. Again, this is an extreme example. This isn't really a proper engine curvature, but it shows an example why that TC is so important for this curvature and we might not use this. So this is where on the throttle some cars feel really difficult and fast people can exploit this area where less skilled people might need some help with the TC on this part. So to understand this better, I draw on a grip circle. By the way, grip circles can be super advanced, difficult. I just want to use them for TC. So you can use this, visualize this in your brain to think about what the TC does, because we're going to build on this. And at the end of this video, you'll properly understand what the TC does and how it works. Okay, but what does it mean then? Well, okay, so when we accelerate hard, we're using the grip circle and we're using only the longitudinal grip. And for cornering, we use the lateral grip. That's for cornering. So if we're cornering hard in a corner, then we might be somewhere here. If we then apply the throttle, while we're cornering so much, we go outside of this limit. We'll spin. We need to stop steering so much. And then when we steer less, we can apply throttle more. So this very simple example, a 50% throttle, 50% steering to be on this limit. So this is constantly happening. The tires are constantly being having these forces of like acceleration and braking and cornering. And the TC is about this limit and how the engine cut and TC and slip, TC slip is interacting with the moments we are coming close to the area where we lose the grip. That's where the TC is for. So it's on the throttle behavior all the time. And we're gonna, like, this is what you really need to understand, this grip circle, because if you don't understand this, you will not understand the TC setting. Again, I want to point out, if you're like cornering and you're hitting the throttle all of a sudden, then boom, you go out of the grip circle. But what if you're really careful on the throttle and you're cornering, but you got that big power spike like in the previous graph where we have a lot of torque all of a sudden, and boom, it will go outside of the grip circle. So this is why your throttle input and the power output is going to be different. And to add even more complexity to it, your rear suspension also going to play a part. Different corners going to play a part. How fast are you driving? So if you're going 200 kilometers, this will not have so much influence on TC. I can go on forever. Okay, so TC settings, okay, here we are. So if I drive my 3.6 car setup from this car, for instance, then I got some balance here. But why 333, okay? So let's show you an example. Do the traction control off, and I do the slip angle off, and I have maximum power cut. I still spin the car. Okay, so there is no TC interference at this point. Okay, so what about when I put traction control, the first one, and the slip angle to 11 and 11? I still spin the car and the TC cut is off. So it doesn't do anything. If you don't have patience with this video, I suggest to tweak it on the equal numbers. And the more you're gonna increase them all, the more it's gonna interfere from a baseline. To avoid complexity, you can just pick these values up simultaneously. If you're more interested in the deep dive of this system, then I highly recommend you stick around. So how does this work? Well, we have the TC is about the acceleration and the tire in a straight line. So like explained before, when we hitting the throttle, we are more on this part, and the TC is gonna determine how much that wheel will go out to the grip circle. TC slip is for the cornering. So when you corner a lot, then it's gonna be how much of this TC slip. But how does that then actually work? And why do we spin when we have these values on the max and the cut on 0? So this is the normal TC. Imagine we hit the throttle and we have high TC. With high TC, when we're approaching the grip circle ending, so we lose control, it is already being triggered and triggered and triggered and triggered through this whole line. So it will trigger at this point. When we have 4, it's going to be later. Later it's going to trigger. So if we're already here, we are more outside of the grip circle. So we allow with TC4 that it's going to be more power available when we exit corners in a straight line. When we use 1, it's going to do even later. So when we're already almost spinning, it is only then going to trigger. The height of the TC first one will determine how early it will start interacting with the grip circle, and the later, okay? But how does these lines now interfere then? What does this mean? Before we do that, we need to go to the slip as well. And the slip, TC slip, works the same, but it's only for cornering. So you got the cornering effect. So let's say you're cornering hard and you want to put power down, then with high TC slip, it's gonna be, we're gonna get close to the circle, and the TC system is gonna say, yo bro, we're getting close to the limit, we're getting close to the limit, start interfering more, But why do we then still spin? Well, we have no cut. And the cut is going to determine the pushback of this value. So with no cut, we always will escape out of the grip circle. So if you took out the cut, it's basically turning everything off. And same for the other way around. And if we would turn off TC, and if we turn off TC slip, we only have cut left. We will also go out of the circle. And cut cannot do anything because we don't have the TC systems working. They work together. So think about this. When you have high cut, you got a pushback on your TC, it being slip or the TC setting. So imagine if we have a very low TC and a very high cut, we get a pushback. a lot. The pushback of the cut will determine how much power is going to be cutted out. It says the TC cut will cut out the power. So high cut will reduce a lot of power. On a TC10, for instance, you can see, yes, it goes outside the circle, it interferes, but as soon, let's say on this part, okay, we have TC, we slipping, then the cut says, okay, we go back. Cut the power, we're losing, we're going outside the circle. So, and this makes sure like a 10 TC and a 10 TC cut will be slow, because the rear tires will, the system is really like sensitive, and it's like, okay, we're gonna cut the power, okay? So that's why this is slow, and that's why you typically see lower values, because it allows to be more outside of this value. And that's why it's so dependent on your skill level, on how your car is set up, because there's a lot of flavor in this line on what you can get away with. That's why some cars need more TC, and that's why, or more cut. Let's say, for instance, the Chevrolet I use on 579, because that will make the system over here as well. And on the Porsche, it's way lower, but it does the same. So lower is not typically faster. So let's give some examples. And with this 1.2 version, as for now, we can get away with less slip and less cut, because the grip circle line, the slip area of control loss, is being more grayed out. So there's more flavor, there's more possible, so we can lower them. Okay, that's why you see TC settings lower. But it's not for every car. Let's say the Lexus and the Aston Martin, they still feel like pretty similar to me. So let's give an example, okay? This is 454, okay? Or yeah, 454. So what does that mean then? Well, we have a certain cut that will give us the pushback, and we'll have the TC. So on average, we're getting close to the grip circle, for instance, and we get a little bit more pushback. So we get a little bit of a safer idea here. And for the cornering, the same. We have also 5, because the TC cut will be influenced on the cornering and on the acceleration. Now, here you can see when we increase the cut, we're just pushing it back more into the circle. Like I explained before, if you want to keep it simple and you want a progressive system, you can use the same value, like 1, or like 111, 222, 333, 444, and then you can interact with the slip and the TC a little bit to get a little bit like more edge on the exit, a more edge on cornering at TC. Hey, and if you're liking this content this far, could you please hit that like button? That would really help me out. These videos take ages to make. And check out the description for some Pimax promotions and my own car setups. Hundreds of people already using skill level setups. So you got different TC aggressiveness levels throughout skill levels. Same with different suspension and wing settings, where you can pick a skill level setup, which gives you like more aggressive setups throughout your races. So let's say you don't really feel confident on a level 4, you just pick a level 3 or level 2. That way your car will be less aggressive in the next race you're going to do. And yeah, that really helps out the support and makes these videos possible. Let's move on. One last thing I want to point out: if you got a very low TC setting with a very high cut, then it basically means we completely go out of the circle quickly, and then you're gonna have a cut that needs to do a lot to get you back in the circle. So think about some sort of a frequency. If you have a very low value and very high cut, then you also get quite some weird behavior. So that's why I said you can typically have them closer together to get some sort of a nuance. And same goes for the other way around. If I would go very high on TC but very low on the cut, then we'll go outside the grip circle, but then there's almost no cutting to cut me back into the circle. So that's why I don't really believe in like 1-9-1 or 10-1-10 kind of a settings. It should be closer together, if you ask me. There's also a little bit of a sneaky you can do to kind of turn it off all of a sudden for a very small moment to create some rotation on demand. And that's this button. You type in over and you get traction control override. I have this on this button over here. Totally got this from my mate Ringelberg. He always like gives me this kind of glitches. Thank you, mate. So what does this do? You pull the traction control override and it turns off the TC, the first value, and this way you get all the power available. Now, sometimes on fast corners and you struggle with rotation, when you're going fast, you can hit this button and we don't have any TC interference. Now, on the high speeds, I don't know if it's placebo, but it definitely helps to turn around the car when, let's say, you do a spin. But it can also give you this little bit of a boost when you don't want the TC to interfere. Maybe there's one corner on track where you really don't want that TC to be used, but you want to use, let's say, I don't know, 455 value on the rest of the track. Something else with your throttle input, it is gonna vary a lot from car to car, but I have my throttle input a little bit like this curvature, because it allows me to play around more in the low throttle input area where I want to use the throttle for some stability. So again, this is also gonna be influenced with your TC. So if you're kind of on a plateau or you don't know how to improve, or you're with your TC settings, don't try to change them all in one go, but also think about how your throttle input is put down in the game, because some cars might be really sensitive on the 70 or 50% input. What I typically do with the throttle and with the TC settings, when I drive a corner, I trail brake. What a lot of times I'll do, I don't use like a little bit of input when I'm in the corners. I typically hit it like full throttle, or I'll come out of a corner, hit like 50%-ish, and then floor it down. You'll see that on a lot of corners where I hit a lot of throttle, stay like 50-60%, and then pushing it up. That's how I drive, basically. Again, I am not an alien. I do get pretty close. I do get some decent lap times, I think. But yeah, that's just a little bit how I think about traction control, throttle input, and yeah, the driving style that comes with it. So, and if you want some less generic advice on setups in general, and I have used this through a lot of updates, and don't pin me on it, but it's also very like rear suspension dependent. I run pretty much like a little bit more of a softer rear suspension a lot of times with my driving style. I typically try to use the lowest the front as possible. And I'll have like a progressive cut, and I'll have more slip angle. So a little bit of the idea is here that I can be more aggressive on the throttle as I'm cornering, but when I have my steering wheel straighten out, I can get away, I can get the most power available. This is basically what it means. If I would do, let's say this would maybe mean that I do not have to be so careful on the straight line exits, but I really need to be careful where I'm cornering a lot and using the throttle. Very, very specific, person specific. There's no right or wrong answer here if you ask me. Typically, yes, high TC will give more interference, will make you slower, gives you the potential to be slow. Then again, it is not night and day, or it's not that obvious that you can still be quick if you control your car properly and steer your car in the grip circle when you're exiting and using your inputs. You can still be really quick with some higher TC settings as well. And leave a comment if you want to see this for ABS, because we can use this model for ABS and brake bias as well. But yeah, I need to hear if you want that video. That would really help me out. Now, if you want to understand the braking better in Le Mans Ultimate and how to use coasting for stability, rotation, and fuel saving, I highly recommend this video. It still very much applies for a lot of cars. Thanks for watching.